Hello, welcome back. This is Jeff Byers. This is Andy 255, and we are working on our final assignment. We just got finished with the XGEN grass patch, if you want to call it that. Turned out pretty good for not having any textures. I mean, that it looks actually really nice for an object that's not been textured. So we added a shader, but that's it. The next thing we're going to do is now we're going to do, we call it a grassy meadow, or we can call it a garden, or whatever you guys want it to be. I'm kind of leaving it up to you. I want you to express yourselves as artists. And, you know, I hate to limit you to one little thing, especially for Module 13. I want this to be a fun module for you again, but I don't want you to rush through it and just slap stuff together. That's not going to work for me. You need to plan it out. So you can create a grassy meadow, you can create a garden, but it needs to be constructed in a way, in a manner that makes sense and that has been thought out, and it's not just slapped together. So basically I'm going to show you how to use the paint effects. Now most of you have already used them, so you know how to use it, so it's okay. Then you can move on, but if there's something in particular that you need to know, you may want to watch the videos to see how I did that. But you need to have 6 textured assets. So you know that if you're creating something for me, you have to basically create a scene, and it needs to be well thought out. Again, just slapping things together just won't work. Your grade will suffer. I can tell the difference. You know, so we want it to be a garden of some kind. If you do a grassy meadow, maybe have a tree and a swing, and you need to have 6 or 7 assets. You're going to create a beach with the water coming in, or you know, you have to really think about a scene like a diorama, and make it a piece of artwork. Okay. You know, if you do a garden, make a fence around it, or you can have a picket fence, or you can do a meadow with a picket fence. You're creating a scene that's portfolio ready. Again, you know, it can be, I think a student did a kind of field with like an old car in it, and tires, and just it was really cool looking. And so you can get inspiration from other people's work, doing, you know, looking at other environments, and you can do all kinds of stuff. I don't want to just limit you on saying, hey, you got to do a garden. I'm forcing you to do a garden. So think outside of that. If you want to do a small park area, you sure can. So what we're looking at is basically 100 by 100 grid units. Let's look at that. So our grid is set up at 24, so it's going to be like twice the size. So I'm thinking maybe let's go 50 grid units. Okay, so what I'm going to do, so let's say the 100 grid units is the biggest you can make it, and the smallest would be 50 by 50. Okay, so let's go ahead and start with that. So let's go to Create, Polygon Primitives, go to Plane, and we can do 50. And right now I have it set at 25. There you go. And we'll leave the divisions at 10 by 10. Okay. All right. So there we go. So there's our setup. And so what we want to do is this area here, each grid unit will equal 1 foot in real life. Let's just put it that way. So if you have a tree, you don't want it, and if it's a small tree, you're going to want to go to the side view and make sure it's not any bigger than the feet we have here. Okay. And if you do a backyard, you know, let's say this is a backyard, and you do a patio. I've had students do that where they've done a patio and they've had a fence on the perimeter. They put all grass in here, and maybe they have a sidewalk or some kind of a walkway. And I've had students do a full garden in this area here. So Have fun with it. I've had people do meadows, and that's fine too. Again, you need to have at least, and they have to be bigger than 2 feet by 2 feet assets. Okay. Now, and they have to be seen too. You can't have grass so long that I can't see your tire. If you get a really cool, find a really cool tire. Now, you can find objects or assets, or you can build them yourself. I would recommend that you find these assets, and we've already found stuff like a park bench. Now, if you want to do a park, great, but you're not allowed to do a full scene. Like, remember your fountain scene that you did? You can't take your fountain scene and then just add grass and flowers. You're going to have to do more of that. But all the little assets, like the light poles, light fixtures, the trash cans, park benches, any rocks you find, that's another that can be counted as an asset. So if you do your water fountain, it has to only take a small amount of space. Okay, but the rest of it you have to design yourself. Okay, again, this has to be designed, and you have to really think about what you're doing. Okay, so to show you paint effects, I'm just going to show you on a smaller, smaller area than this, but this is about the size that you're going to work with. Okay, so paint effects, it's pretty easy to use. They're actually really fun to use, and so this is the size that we want to start with. Okay, so I'm going to put this in a layer, and we'll just use something smaller. So I'm going to go to create, and I'm going to do a smaller plane. We're going to do something that's more manageable. We'll do 10 by 10. Okay, start with that. And I would start with something like this first, a little more manageable. Okay. Now, like anything else, you can use the soft select tool to kind of create your foundation, your ground, the groundwork. And so let's do a little bit of that first. So I'm double click on this and go into sock selection. You can also hit the B key, that'll activate it too. But you'll need to have like one vertex selected. Okay, and you can hit the B key, and that turns it off and on. You've got your fall off radius, and you can play with that a little bit. But this kind of, you can move your vertices around. You can hold the B key down and scale that down. So if you want to create your own elevation here with this, you can. And so I'll just create a little bit of elevation and reset, pushing in and pulling out. And when you present your work, you don't want a horizon that's flat. Okay, so I'll probably want to pull that up a little bit more too. There we go. That works a little bit better. It just looks a little nicer if you're doing like a meadow or something like that. And when you work with your larger area, then you can add more subdivisions, and it'll give you a lot nicer looking terrain. Also, if you start off with low like this, you can always smooth it. So I can go back in here and I can smooth it at 1, and that'll work out great. There we go. So now you can see that looks really nice. Okay, so we'll start with something like that, 10 by 10. And I'm going to delete by type history on this and freeze transformations, get all that cleaned out. And then I need to make sure that I have my paint effects available. Okay, so I'm going to go in here. Okay, I'm going to go to load shelf, and I'm going to look for paint effects. So paint effects shelf, paint effects mel. There we go. And then open it. There we go. And there it's opened up for me. If it's ever missing, you guys can go ahead and do the same thing. And if you don't see it here, you can go ahead and open it. But this is you can make paintable. Okay. So before you can do anything, you've got to make your surface paintable. So whether it's an object, let's say you create an object or a box or something, you want to have grass growing on it for some odd reason, you can do that. Okay, and it will follow the actual geometry. So I'm going to click on Make Paintable. Okay, so that's the first thing I do. And then in here, after I make it paintable, then I can go in here and I can basically create whatever I want. Now this is going to be kind of an outdoor, and we want it to have grass, and we want other foliage, trees and bushes and stuff like that. Whatever. There's a lot of stuff you can use in here, so we'll go through it pretty quickly. So we got plants and plants mesh. What's the difference between plants mesh and plants mesh and plants? One is a real 3D object. I kind of shy away from using these. They look more cartoonish. The plants themselves look a lot more realistic. Okay. Now these are not meant to be looked at really closely. Okay, just to kind of give you an idea. So let's look at the grass. We've got grass. Okay, looks like we have flowers. Okay, we have flowers and flower mesh, and you guys can decide which one you want to do. We're not going to be turning these into polygons. We just don't have time for that. It takes a lot of work. When I do a scene, I want it to look photorealistic. Then what I would do is I would let Maya do all the work as far as the modeling goes, and then I retexture them. I would re-UV them and retexture them. And if you really want to go crazy with photorealism, then you can go and look for them. I think it's Mega. I'm trying to remember what it's called. It's Megascans. I had a little bit of a brain cloud there. Megascan library. So just type in Megascan and look at their products, Megascan, and you can browse their Megascans. And if you're using Unreal 4 engine, I think that you guys can get this stuff for free. So before I had an account with them, and they have some really cool 3D scanned objects that you can use, and I am okay with you using them. You guys can, if you get some free 3D assets from here, go for it. They're huge though, and they'll render really slow, but they'll still look really nice. So feel free to do that. Now unfortunately, we're gonna have to use the Maya software renderer, which I know you guys hate using, but that's really the only renderer I know of that can render them. I think V-Ray can render paint effects now, which is really, really cool. That means that if you have V-Ray, you can start using that. I think they put that in there. There's a plugin for it. But otherwise, we're going to be using software render, and that's fine. And that works out fine. You just have to use a little more lights, and you have to really tweak them out, as you guys found out with your fountains. Okay? So here's your flowers. There's a lot of cool stuff in here. Start thinking about how you want to lay your stuff out. I don't want any weird or wild stuff like this. I want it to look as realistic as possible. So you're not going to have hamburgers and bacon and sausage links unless it's a storefront or something like that, or you know, that kind of stuff. So stay away from that kind of stuff. But grass, and we've got plants that we looked at, and we've got trees, and we've got grass and flowers. So those are the things that we're going to hit the most. Grasses, okay? And so the idea is to kind of check out the grass yourself. So what I would do is go through the ones you really like. The ones I like the most, the best, are the longer grasses, the ones that have wind to them and they actually move in the wind, which are really, really cool. So check those out. Again, you know, I'm open to a beach scene. I'm open to, but I want you to be creative, and I want to see what you guys come up with. I had a guy do a little river, and he had a bridge that goes across the river, and he had a lot of cool stuff, and I mean, these are things you guys can do. So it's your imagination. I know some of you guys are limited on time, but you know what? Don't rush this. It'll look rushed and it won't look as nice. Okay? So again, Megascans is a great place to go, along with other things like we've talked about. CG Trader, you can get some free stuff there. And any other place you want to go. Some of you guys have gone other places too, and even mentioned that in your discussions, which is great. Whatever you can find free stuff that is textured. This time I want them all textured. If it doesn't come textured, you'll have to texture it. Okay? I won't accept anything that's not textured. Okay? And you have to have 6 assets. Okay? Right, so I start off with the grass wind blowing, grass wind wide. Okay, kind of fun one. So you just drag and drop it. Okay, and your scale of your brush has everything to do with how big the grass is. So now, if I say that this is 10 feet across and each one of these is a foot, how does that look with the grass? So the grass is 12 inches tall on here. So that works. Okay? Alright, so there's a lot of cool things with this. I'm going to go ahead and hit the Q key and get out of there. And if you play the animation, you can actually see it actually blowing in the wind, which is so cool. I mean, there's no other software that I know of that creates paint effects and you can paint actual foliage on here. And you can actually turn it into, and when I do real scenes or try to do realistic scenes, you know, these are just tubes and they're using a shader, so they're not real textures. Real textures are where it's at, and so we just don't have time to do that. And I understand that, so I won't be grading you on whether you have these textured or not, okay? So it's okay. Alright, so with that said, you can create those and it will follow the outline, okay? You were really serious about the scale, okay? And so when you get into the strokes, you can see that we have all kinds of, we have display quality here, so you can see I'm in the attribute editor for this under the stroke shape wind. And each time you do a stroke, it comes up with this. It's called the stroke. So if you have a big area and you want to control all the grass, or if you want to put, you know, I would recommend that you just don't just go crazy with the grass. Just do it here and there, okay? And have some longer, have some shorter. Keep it down to like 10 or 15 strokes, otherwise it gets very difficult. You're going to have this all filled up when you get it all finished with all the flowers and everything. But that's basically how it works, okay? So it's super simple. And here's the thing, if you are running into issues, especially with a bigger scene like 50 by 50, it's like 5 times as big as this, your scene, then you're going to run into speed issues, okay, like twirling around or even you know, moving your stuff around. So this is where your display quality comes in, okay? You can turn that down, and that will speed everything up, okay? Alright, so sample density, that changes how dense the object is. Kind of like XGEN, you know, it's totally different, but it's kind of like that when you think about density, okay? Alright, so you can make it more dense or less dense, okay? Alright, so basically that is it. Now you can get into your wind grass and you can go into your channels, and this would take me forever to go through all these profiles, but these are all things you can change in here if you'd like. Tube section basically changes how many sections you have per tube, okay? So if I want to add more, it will render out more tube sections on the mesh itself. Now that will make it slower. Shading, the colors that this object has, tube shading, these are the colors that you see. You can tweak those out if you want to. Texturing, you can add color maps and opacity maps. Illumination, all these, you want to use real lights, okay? So how would you light this? So what you want to do is you do want to texture the base, okay? So find a really good ground texture that's seamless, and you can find those anywhere, but Substance Source has some seamless stuff. So you could do that if you wanted to, or if you know where you can find some seamless textures for a ground, feel free to do that. What I don't want to see is really lousy textures that I've seen before from students that are not high enough resolution and they look terrible when you put them on. That's just going to make your scene look really bad. So I would highly recommend that you guys find good texture, good seamless ground textures that are at least 2048 by 2048 at least. Okay, even at that size, you're going to have issues with it kind of pixelating and not looking good. So you'll have to tile it. Okay. All right. So anyway, with that said, basically that's it. You find the grass that you want to use, whatever grass you want to use. You're just going to have to do a lot of experimenting. And let's go back in here and see if we can find some other stuff. Where the grass is at here. And just kind of look at some of the really cool stuff. Jungle grass is always kind of cool. And you can see that even though that brush is small, it's just a different kind of brush, right? So that's really huge. And I can just Control Z back. And I'm going to make this a lot smaller, like that, so you can see that. There we go. Just holding the B key down, make it a little smaller. And I'm just kind of moving it around in a circle. That gives me the best looking, looking results, especially for trees too as well. Let me go back in there. Okay, you can delete stuff by easily just select it and delete it if you want to. And it's still live. Don't go back too far. If you do, you have to make it paintable again. And then we'll just go back in here and just keep messing around. Let's look at some flowers. Flowers are really cool. So here's Daisy. Okay. And that's way too big. Okay, so you have to be. That's why we have to talk about. We have to think about scale when we do this. These are way too big for this scale. You see, so you know, a flower is what, 2 feet tall, or a foot tall? No, I don't think so. It depends on the flower, of course. Okay, so you have to make these smaller. So if you have grass, you don't want the flowers to get too much taller than the grass, because that would look kind of weird. These are usually about 1 or 2 feet tall, but you know, these dandelions, you know how big dandelions are, that's too big for the scale. So that's what I'm talking about, scale. Scale's a big deal, and those are just too big. That's too big for the scale. Okay, and I'm going to get you on that. I'll look at that and I'll go, wow, okay. So I'll look at your grid and I'll go, So the dandelion is over 2 feet tall. I don't think I've ever seen a dandelion that big. So be careful with that. So just kind of check out the cool things you can do. Okay. Again, you're going to need a really nice base. I think that's the first thing I would do, is figure out, okay, what am I going to do? Am I going to do a garden? Am I going to do a beach? So if you do a beach scene, which is really cool, beach scenes, they usually have clumps of grass all over, and you can get away with that. Also, grass is just totally, you know, dedicated to grass. It's kind of boring because you know, in real life, not everything's going to be grassy. You might have some grass that's a lot shorter, so just keep that in mind. Maybe do longer grass on the outside and shorter grass, clumps of grass on the inside. That's a lot more interesting, and then you can have flowers in here and add stuff. And just kind of experiment. Find the paint effects you like, write them down, okay? And just be strategic in using them. Alright, so I've got some grass. Let's get some of these in the background. Yeah, let's take a look at these guys. Add a little bit of here. And let's go into grass. So AstroTurf, stay away from that one. That's really ugly. And grass clump, that's probably my favorite one. One of my favorite ones. This is the grass clump. Okay, so we can just add some clumps of grass in here. Maybe in this area through here. Again, just use these paint effects, and just be mindful of what you're doing to create a really interesting scene. And if there's a grass that you really enjoy or really like, just do little clumps. Now, they don't have a real flood, flooding thing here where you have to paint it all yourself. Okay, and usually when I paint grass, I kind of go in a zigzag, like a Z. That kind of gets it. So if you just do one way, it looks like that. It looks terrible. So I kind of go back and forth when I paint the grass, or I do in a circle. Okay, that's even the best way. Just the circle, because that will actually give you a nice clump. If you just do one way like that, it just looks weird. Looks like the wind is blowing, and it just doesn't look natural. Okay, so just kind of experiment with your strokes and stuff. Okay, all right. Trees. Okay, and again, you guys can look in here and you can do the display quality, lower, higher, and let's look at trees. And then, the nice thing is that if you have your grass too long, like I said before, your assets won't even show. You won't even see them. So just keep that in mind, how tall you're going to do the grass. Okay, and also don't do the same size grass. Like, go a little bit smaller and do little clumps of grass here and there. Okay, underlying the larger grass makes it look a lot more interesting. And then maybe have some really long clumps of grass here and there. It just kind of breaks things up. Alright, you can see that the clumps, it gets really crazy. And if you want to do it all at once, you would have a hard time doing it, because it really won't work that way. It only does one, as you can see. And that attribute editor, let's go in here to Windows, General Editors, and the attribute spreadsheet. Let's take a look and see if it will be in there. So it looks like it is. You might be able to do them all at once this way. Let's take a look here. There's all the strokes. Visibility. Let's look at translate, transform, rotate, scale, render, tessellation, geometry, all. And let's see if they have the density. They have visibility. Let's take a look at everything. Density. I'm probably going to pi it. I don't even see it. Density. Anyway, if it was there, it would be here. You would see it. I just don't see it. It doesn't mean it's not here. I'm just going through it really quick. So, Arnold, no, geometry. Let me try that one. Draw, see, draw order. That looks. Display. There it is. Display percent. Is that it? Display quality? Let's try that. Maybe that's it. And let's go all the way down and just type in 50. And hit enter. Yeah, that worked. So it's the first one. I just missed it. There we go. Cool. So that's a way you can do them all at once if you want to, if things are running a little bit slow, and then you can back in there. Just don't forget you did that. Alright, cool. Alrighty. Alright, so then what we want to do, after you find a really great texture that is your base texture, that's really going to set you up for getting the rest of it to look nice. And having an idea of what you are going to do, okay, and how you're going to fill that area up, make it look nice, not just a grassy field. That's kind of lame. And I know some of you guys are thinking you get away with that, but be very careful with that. Alright, so the next thing with this, after you get all your strokes in and everything's looking the way you want it, you can either hit the Q key and get out of it. You can delete everything because it's so easy to create. We're going to do one other thing here. We'll do a tree. So the trees, they're kind of hit and miss on the trees. Okay, you have to test the tree mesh. Tree meshes look better, but they're really heavy. I usually do the trees at the very end. So let's do the heaviest tree they have. The oak white leafy heavy. Okay. Alright, so let's do one tree. There it is. And it's heavy. And it will slow things down. Again, if you do trees, you can kind of be careful with those. Again, be careful of scale. That's a very small tree. If we do 1 foot, be 1, 2, 3 foot, 4 foot tree. I'm not saying trees aren't 4 feet, but they're not. They don't look like that. So let's make that a little bit bigger. So let's put that. An oak tree would be something like that, and yeah, and so that looks a little better. The scale's correct on that now, or at least it's closer than it was, right? Okay, so that's what you have to look for and watch for, is your scale, how it is scaled to the flowers, how it's scaled to the environment we have. Okay, so be careful with that. So I'm going to go Control Z back. Some students really like the mesh trees, and that's great. Those of you that want to kind of do a sand dune thing, they got these palm trees, which are really cool. If you want to do a forest, you can do these. They got pine trees, which are really cool too. Okay, so there's a lot of cool things you guys can do. So just have a vision. And if something doesn't work, don't be afraid to start over again, because it's that easy. It's super easy to start over again. But again, if you like what you are doing, make sure you save your work as well. So always save as. Okay, and you can always test. I would always test to see what things look like first, and even render some scenes out. So let's go ahead and hit the Q key. I think that's the next thing we're going to do. I'm going to add just a really quick material here. So it looks decent. I'm just going to use a Maya Blinn, or excuse me, Lambert for the ground. So it's not shiny or anything. And I'm just going to kind of do a dark dirt color. Okay, so, I want you to have a real texture. Obviously, this is for example purposes. And I want you to do much better than this. This is just show you how I would paint, and these are just samples. Okay, so just let me know if you have any issues or problems. You need to, if you've forgotten how to light and render with software renderer, just go into your my fountain videos, or find them on YouTube and rewatch those. I don't want to go through the software renderer again. If you have V-Ray, man, you're in luck. You guys can render it out. Now, V-Ray is free for 30 days, and we're actually going to get into V-Ray and Phoenix. So we're on our last, basically 4 weeks. That should last us through, I think it's our last 3 weeks, actually, after this one. So 13, 14, 15, yeah. So 3 weeks, so you should go ahead and download V-Ray, and it'd be a lot more fun. It's easy. Set up the Sky Dome and you're ready to go. So if you don't like using the software renderer, go ahead and feel free to download V-Ray and use that. Anyway, let me know if you have any questions or issues. Again, your scene, make sure you save your work, your Paint Effects work, and keep in touch with me, and I will see you guys soon. Have a great day.